One of the most beloved and mysterious characters in Game of Thrones was Jaqen H'ghar, and he is even more interesting in the books. In both the books and the show, Jaqen was a prisoner in the Black Cells for an unknown reason, and he killed people at Harrenhal for Arya since she saved his life. Jaqen killed different people in the books and the show, but for the sake of this video, that's not important. The big difference between the books and the show is that in the show, Jaqen went back to the House of Black and White and he trained Arya. In the books, Jaqen went down to Old Town. He killed a boy named Pate and he stole Pate's face. That raises the question, who is Jaqen working for and what is his goal? First off, let's prove that Jaqen killed Pate. Before Jaqen left Arya, he changed his face. The description of his new face had 4 of the exact same features as the description of the Alchemist. Full cheeks, hooked nose, a scar on his right cheek, and black hair that curled. On top of that, the Alchemist told Pate that he was a stranger, that he was no one. The stranger is one of the names for the god of many faces, and no one is who the faceless men strive to be. Therefore, it is safe to assume that the Alchemist was actually Jaqen H'ghar. The next step is proving that Jaqen killed Pate and stole his face. In the very first chapter of the 4th book, the Alchemist appeared to have killed Pate, and George R.R. confirmed this in the very last sentence of the book. Here's how he did that. Leo Tyrell had referred to Pate as Pate the Pig Boy, and Pate took that as an insult. So we know that Pate did not like being called Pate the Pig Boy. In the final chapter of the book, Pate was still alive, or so it seemed. Pate introduced himself to Sam, saying that his name was Pate, like Pate the Pig Boy. That was George R. R. Martin's way of confirming that the Alchemist had killed Pate and stolen his face. It's worth noting that that was literally the final line of the book, a pretty cool cliffhanger. So it is safe to assume that Jaqen H'ghar left Arya, killed Pate, and stole his face. That leads into the more interesting questions. Who is he working for, and what is his goal? When Jaqen left Arya at Harrenhal, he told her that they must part for he had duties. Not long after, King Balon Greyjoy died. In the show, Euron killed Balon himself, but in the books, Balon was killed by a faceless man. The ghost of Highheart had a vision of this, and Euron all but admitted as much to his younger brother Aeron in the Forsaken chapter of the Winds of Winter. Faceless men are expensive for someone like Euron to acquire, so the big question is, how did Euron pay the faceless men? We do not know for sure, but we might have gotten a clue. Euron claimed that he once had a dragon's egg, but he threw that egg into the sea. That seems unlikely, especially considering the fact that Euron wants to bond one of Dany's dragons. A popular fan theory is that Euron paid a faceless man with a priceless dragon egg. If so, then Jaqen H'ghar might now have that dragon egg. Another popular fan theory is that Jaqen wants to hatch that egg. Before I get to my own theory, let's take a look at that one. Pate was a novice at the Citadel. He was also a servant for the senile Archmaester named Walgrave. The Alchemist convinced Pate to steal Walgrave's key, and Pate assumed that it was because Walgrave's key could supposedly open every door at the Citadel. In other words, that key would give Jaqen access to ravens, to artifacts such as glass candles, and to every ancient scroll. Some of the old Valyrian scrolls down in the locked vaults were said to be the only surviving copies in the world. Many fans believe that Jaqen wants to find out how to hatch the dragon egg. I am going to entertain this theory, but first, we need to address the elephant in the room. Braavos was founded by fugitives who had escaped the Valyrian freehold. Those original Braavosi hated their Valyrian overlords, and they hated their dragons. Many Braavosi still feel that way. Case in point, Jon Snow had a conversation with Tycho Nestoris of the Iron Bank of Braavos. During that conversation, Jon made a joke about how the wall would be warmer if they had a dragon. But Tycho didn't find that joke funny. Instead, Tycho reminded Jon that he was from Braavos, and they hated dragons. To play devil's advocate, Jaqen H'ghar is not from Braavos. He might have trained at the House of Black and White in Braavos, but Jaqen told Arya that he is from the free city of Lorath. If true, that would explain why he spoke in the third person, since that is the way that the weirdos of Lorath speak. It's also worth noting that Jaqen has a history of bending the rules of the Faceless Men. Back at Harrenhal, Jaqen told Arya that he would kill 3 people since she had stolen 3 lives from the Red God by saving him, Rorge, and Biter. Arya tried to get him to kill more than 3 people, but he resisted, so she gave him his own name as the 3rd kill. Since Jaqen could not get her to unsay his name, he killed a 3rd man and a 4th, as well as 8 more, in order to help Arya free the Northmen from the prison cells. After that, she unsaid his name. So Jaqen H'ghar often claimed that he was no one, but in the end, he bent the rules when he wanted to for his own sake, and he might be doing the same with the dragon egg. Therefore, the theory that he has a dragon egg and he wants to find out how to hatch it is viable. However, this theory has a few problems. First off, we don't know whether or not Jaqen even has a dragon egg. It is just a theory. Second, even if he has one, we don't know if his goal is to hatch it. Jaqen might want to figure out how to turn that egg into a bomb, which appears to be what accidentally happened at the tragedy of Summerhall. The third problem is that Dany's dragons took a few years to get to fighting size. So even if Jaqen has a dragon egg, and even if his goal is to hatch that egg, it probably won't play a part in the story. In other words, the biggest problem with that theory is not that it isn't true. The biggest problem with that theory is that the discussions of Jaqen often end there. And they shouldn't. There are plenty of other clues that Jaqen has a role to play unrelated to the hatching of a dragon egg. That leads us into the last topic of the day, the prophecy of all prophecies, namely, the Song of Ice and Fire. In the House of the Undying, Dany had a vision of a man who looked like her brother Viserys. Dany later came to believe that the man in her vision was her other brother, Rhaegar. In the vision, Rhaegar told a woman nursing a babe that the child's name was Aegon. Rhaegar also said that the child had a song, that the child was the prince that was promised and his was the Song of Ice and Fire. As a reminder, when Jaqen first met Arya, half of his hair was white and half of his hair was red. A pretty obvious clue that Jaqen H'ghar might also be interested in that prophecy. In fact, some fans used to believe that Jaqen H'ghar was Rhaegar. Some fans probably still do. Personally, I never bought into that idea, but it would be pretty cool if it turns out to be true. At the end of the day though, Jaqen H'ghar is a very interesting character, even if he is no one, or at least no one other than himself. Jaqen might have a dragon egg, and he might be trying to hatch that dragon egg, but for all we know, Jaqen might not have a dragon egg. He might just be looking for information about the prophecy, the Song of Ice and Fire, and it just so happens that the best friend of the prince who was promised has arrived to the Citadel, and he arrived with something that is one of a kind. In order to fund the second half of his trip, which was from Braavos to Old Town, Samwell Tarly sold books that he had taken from the library up at Castle Black to the captain of the ship. The captain of the ship told Sam that he planned on reselling them to the Citadel. At least one of those books was written by Septim Barth, whose writings had been burned during the reign of Baelor the Blessed. In other words, at least one of those books might be the last remaining copy in the world of Septim Barth's thoughts. As a quick refresher, Septim Barth was the best friend and hand of the king to Jaehaerys Targaryen. Septim Barth was the man who saw Arya Targaryen when she returned on Balerion, so he saw things that no one else saw, horrific things that he wished he had never seen. After Arya's death, Septim Barth wrote a book called Dragons, Worms, and Wyverns, Their Unnatural History. Tyrion had read a fragment of that book. Unfortunately, it was one of the books that King Baelor the Blessed had ordered to be destroyed. But who knows, maybe a copy of that book survived up at the wall. One thing we know for sure, Sam sold books to the captain of his ship, and the captain planned on reselling those books to the Citadel. At least one of those books was written by Septim Barth, and that is the type of book that the Maesters would lock away. It just so happens that Samwell Tarly has a new friend, Jaqen H'ghar, and Jaqen has a key to every door at the Citadel. On top of that, Jaqen knows that Arya was still alive at Harrenhal. In theory, Jaqen and Sam might figure out the truth about Jon's parentage while researching the Song of Ice and Fire. I look forward to this unlikely duo, Jaqen H'ghar as Pate the Pig Boy, and Samwell Tarly, also known as Sam the Slayer, in more ways than one.
You've got too much wood in there.
But the more wood, the bigger the fire.